In the summer of 2018, my boyfriend Alex and I finally took the trip we'd been dreaming about for years, island hopping in the Philippines. We both had demanding jobs in the city and had saved for nearly a year. The plan was simple: avoid tourist spots, skip the crowded beaches, and find the kind of places that didn't have Wi-Fi, or maybe even electricity. We wanted quiet, we wanted real. We landed in Cebu and started making our way south, hopping on buses, ferries, even hitching rides in jeepneys. The farther we went, the less connected the world seemed. On our third day, we stayed in a small fishing village, barely more than 20 huts along the shore. That's where we met Eno, a local fisherman with skin like leather and eyes that didn't blink much. Over some shared beer, we asked him if he knew of any islands that weren't on the usual travel apps or Instagram feeds. He stared at the ocean for a long moment. Then he said, "There's one, but not many go there now. It's old. You can go, but don't stay past sundown." I laughed, thinking it was just local superstition. Alex grinned and asked how much for the ride. The next morning, Eno picked us up in a small motorboat. The sea was calm, the sky cloudless. As we drifted out, Eno didn't say much. He just stared straight ahead and gripped the wheel like something might try to stop us. The island wasn't far, maybe 40 minutes away. It was stunning. A small emerald jewel surrounded by shallow coral reefs and framed in a perfect white crescent of beach. No docks, no signs, not a soul in sight. No boats, no footprints, no paths. Just sand, jungle, and silence. Alex turned to me and said, "This is it. This is the dream." We swam. We sunbathed. We explored the dense jungle, finding strange stone formations half buried in vines, like old monuments eroded by time. We joked that it felt like something out of a lost civilization movie. Then around 4:15 p.m. the weather changed. The sky didn't turn gray, it turned yellow, like old paper. The air thickened, the wind stopped, the trees stopped moving. And then came the bells. Faint at first, metallic, like wind chimes, but deeper, older. There were no structures, nothing that could have made that sound. We looked around, nothing moved. The birds had gone quiet. Even the waves had softened, lapping against the shore like a whisper. Alex suggested packing up, just in case the weather turned worse. Eno had promised to return by 5 p.m., but there was no sign of his boat. As we waited, we heard the bells again, this time closer. Then came a new sound, not the chimes. Footsteps, crunching softly on the sand, deliberate, heavy. From the tree line, a figure emerged. Tall, thin, almost skeletal, dressed in white but with no details, just pale fabric that moved like smoke. It didn't approach, it didn't wave. It just watched. I called out, thinking maybe we were being pranked. No response. Then another figure appeared. And another. No faces, no voices, just stillness. The bells rang again, this time right behind us. But when we turned, nothing. Just mangroves and our fading footprints. At 6:10 p.m., we saw Eno's boat in the distance, tearing toward us faster than it had any right to go. He was yelling something, waving his arms. "Get on, get on!" We didn't hesitate. We dropped everything and ran knee-deep into the water. As we climbed aboard, I looked back at the shore. There were at least 12 figures standing at the edge of the trees now, motionless. And one, just one, that had raised its hand. Not to wave, but to point. Right at us. Eno didn't speak the whole way back. When we reached the village, he pulled us aside and said, "That place, it's not always there. Sometimes the sea forgets it. Sometimes it remembers. But it always remembers those who see it." We tried looking for it the next morning. We rented a small boat and followed the same route on GPS. There was no island, just open sea, as if it had never existed. Weeks later, back home, I started waking up at 3:17 a.m. every night. No dreams, no memories, just a single sound outside my window. A faint metallic chime. And sometimes in the reflection of the glass, I think I see a hand. Still raised. Still pointing. In the summer of 2022, I took a solo trip through Italy. One of those bucket list things I'd always talked about but never done. I planned to hit Rome, Florence, and Venice, but I wanted a quieter stop in between. Something off the tourist map. That's how I ended up in a tiny hilltop village called San Giusto. It wasn't on any major travel blogs. I found it on a message board where someone said, "If you want silence and shadows, go to San Giusto." It sounded poetic. I booked a 3-night stay at an Airbnb there, a renovated stone apartment underneath an old church. The host described it as ancient, peaceful, and full of character. They weren't lying. The moment I arrived, something felt still, like the village had stopped breathing. Only a few people lived there, old faces peeking from behind shutters. No children, no shops, no cars. Just winding cobblestone alleys and a crumbling chapel at the village's peak. My Airbnb was built into the cliffside beneath that very chapel. Stone walls, wooden beams, and a small bedroom carved out of what must have once been a cellar. It smelled of sage and damp stone, but it was quiet. Almost too quiet. The first night I was woken around 2 a.m. by the sound of whispering. I couldn't make out words, just hushed voices, like a conversation behind a wall. I got up, checked the apartment. Nothing. Then I noticed something strange. Behind the armoire in the bedroom was a sealed wooden trapdoor. The outline was barely visible, like it had been boarded up decades ago. I pulled the armoire away. The trapdoor was nailed shut, but faint symbols were carved into the wood. Crosses, stars, and something that looked like a stitched mouth. I didn't touch it. The next morning I asked the old woman who ran the only cafe in town if the church was still in use. She frowned and said, "It's been closed since the disappearances." I asked what she meant. She looked around nervously and whispered, "Don't sleep beneath the altar. That's where the prayers never reached." I laughed it off, thinking it was just village superstition. But that night the whispers came back. Stronger. Clearer. They were coming from beneath the floorboards, beneath the trap door. Around 3 a.m. I heard something heavy slide across the stone. Then 3 soft knocks from under the bed. I froze. The knocking repeated. 3 times, slow, deliberate. I grabbed my phone and tried to record it, but as soon as I hit record, silence. I moved the armoire again. The trapdoor looked slightly newer, like someone had scraped away some of the dust and grime around the edges. And this time, there were fresh markings on the wood. Names, mine included. I didn't sleep. I packed my things and left before sunrise, hiking down the path to where I'd left the rental car. When I reached the edge of the village, I looked back one last time, and I saw someone, or something, watching me from the chapel window. Pale face, hollow eyes, smiling. I drove all the way back to Rome and canceled the rest of my itinerary. When I told the Airbnb host I'd left early, they simply replied, "It doesn't like when people move the armoire." Months later, I tried to look up San Giusto again, but there was no listing, no mention of it on Airbnb. Even Google Maps had no record of the chapel, just a green blur where the village used to be. And to this day, I still hear the whispers. Usually around 2 a.m. Usually when I'm alone. In the summer of 2018, I booked a last-minute vacation deal I found online. A 7-night stay at a luxury mountain resort in British Columbia. It was a steal. Half the usual price, panoramic views, spa access, hiking trails. The booking site looked legitimate. Lots of reviews, high ratings, even a verified badge. But there was one strange thing. I couldn't find the resort on Google Maps. I figured it was just new or maybe private. The confirmation email had detailed directions, so I followed them. Bad idea. After a long drive through twisting forest roads, my GPS gave out. No service. But the directions continued. Turn left at the fallen birch tree, continue past the stone marker. It felt more like a treasure hunt than a hotel check-in. Eventually, I reached a clearing where the trees thinned out, revealing a towering wooden lodge. The sign out front read, "Welcome to Eden Pines Retreat." It looked beautiful but also off. The paint on the lodge was slightly weathered. No cars in the lot. No staff at the front desk. Just a handwritten note. "Guests, please check yourselves in. Room keys are hanging." I found my room, 205, and tried to convince myself it was all part of the rustic charm. The room was spacious but bare. No Wi-Fi. No TV. A landline phone that didn't work. And worst of all, the windows didn't open. That night I walked around the lodge trying to find someone. The halls echoed with every step. Still no staff. But there was something else. I kept hearing a faint creaking, like footsteps on old wood, from the floors above. The problem? There were no floors above. On night 2, I met another guest, or so I thought. A man in his 50s, standing by the fireplace in the common area, staring at an empty hearth. He said without turning, "Don't stay past the 3rd night." Then he walked down the hallway and vanished around a corner. I followed, but when I turned the same corner, nothing. No doors, no rooms, just a solid wooden wall. By the 3rd night, I was ready to leave. I packed up, got in my car, and started the drive out. But the road didn't lead where it should. Instead of the forest entrance, I kept circling back to the same point. The wooden lodge, now in the rearview mirror, no matter which way I turned. I drove for hours. Finally, I stopped to rest. That's when I noticed something carved into the inside of the windshield, as if written with a fingertip. It said, "Checkout denied." I spent that night in my locked car, listening to footsteps circling around it. Scraping, breathing. Once, I swear someone whispered my name. When dawn finally broke, I started the car and drove again. This time, the road led out. Back to the highway. I didn't question it, just kept driving until I reached the nearest town. When I told the local police, they looked confused. Eden Pines? That place burned down in 2004. Whole thing, lodge and all, and was condemned. No one's been up there in years. I tried finding the site again. The map, gone. The original booking site, vanished. My confirmation email, blank. Like it never existed. To this day, I still have the wooden room key, 2105 carved into it. And sometimes, when I leave it in a drawer, I find it somewhere else the next morning. On my nightstand, on the floor near the front door, or once, resting on the driver's seat of my locked car. If you made it this far, thank you for spending your night with us. If these stories gave you chills, there's plenty more waiting. Don't forget to subscribe to Night Fear Stories for new terrifying tales every single night. Sleep well, if you can.